Hi guys, it's Joey or Rowan. I hope everybody's well on this snowy day. It's pretty gorgeous outside. So the title of today's video is going to be Witchy Judgement, and it's in the negative sense, the sense of being judgmental against certain things. I'm going to cover a couple, 3 or 4 different issues I've noticed, and I've decided to do this video because it's a common theme at the minute, and people keep mentioning it and it keeps coming up, and I thought, well, if it's topical, let's do a video on it. So this is what it is. I'm going to cover the following areas. So those outside the pagan or witchcraft path that judge badly inward to us. Those within our own path that judge us, how pagans judge other religions, and how we view our own paths and others, and why we should stop the judgment, basically. So let's start with the easiest part to discuss, which is those outside of our path who judge us. And this can be divided into, I think, 2 categories: non-religious sort of discrimination, and then other religious discrimination from different types of religion who judge us. As a whole, and obviously there are people within every single excuse me, I'm moving forward. There are people within every form of community, whether it be religious or not, who are behaving in such a way, negatively, aggressively, violently, abusively, who need dealing with, and that's not being judgmental against people. That is dealing with people who are a threat to other human beings, and that's a whole matter unto itself. This is covering the unfair judgmental nature of a lot of what's going on at the minute, and it seems to be very sad. So normal non-religious stereotyping and judgment, where does that come from? How do we deal with it? So this is people who don't, maybe not from a religious affiliation, but have passed some sort of judgment on the path that you're walking. And I think there tends to be 2 non-religious stereotypes, which is one which is the airy fairy, head in the clouds, head up your own arse, negative connotation of hippie, with the tied with a pagan path. And then the other one is a sort of darker, unnatural, haggish, ugly stereotype. Actually, there's a third as well. There's the deciding that the Gothic subculture and paganism are all the same thing, and then they're not, and they're both can be really beautiful, and there are Goths who are pagan, and there are Goths who are every other religious affiliation, and there are Goths who are probably atheist. My sister was Gothic and pagan, so I know a little bit about both subcultures, but that it's not really a subculture. Culture, let's call it a culture, because subculture seems unfair. But people outside of it, they don't really understand it, and it's different, and it's not societal norm, if you want to call it that. I think it's a dangerous thing to call anything a societal norm. But those are 3 of the ways in which non-religious people sort of judge us. Now, where does the hippie stereotype come from? Well, unfortunately, a lot of what is portrayed in the mainstream media is a bit of this airy-fairy nonsense type thing. I used to be so-and-so in a past life, and people seem to get into the mainstream media and get the attention focused on them who are a little bit cuckoo, to be honest. That's probably too judgmental of me, actually. See, you have to regulate your judgment of everything and be careful, and that's the whole point of this video. Even me, especially me, I think it's a really poignant thing that we have to regulate within ourselves and outside. So from people who seem to focus on these media images of people who are a bit like, there's nothing wrong in the world and nothing bad ever happens, and it's not a realistic approach to life. And to be honest, most of the pagans and witches I have the honour of knowing in life are nothing like that. It's just a media representation of how pagans are supposed to be. I think a lot of it comes from a lot of the fact that pagans revere life, because they often view the there's the divine energy moving through everything. So they honour animals and humans and trees and all the rest of it, and you honour the life. And people are afraid to even say that, because then they get portrayed as being like this crazy hippie nonsense. And it just seems odd in a world that is leaning towards being greener, in a world that is taking up environmental causes because the general public is becoming more aware of it and the need for it. And we have all these institutions against animal cruelty and the welfare of animals. It seems odd that there is still this negative stereotyping. And I think the only way to combat this is to show that a lot of pagans have their feet firmly on the ground, and what they are fighting for, their causes, are very topical, they're very relevant, and they're necessary. I mean, you only have to look at the growth of companies who have honed in on these ideals. Lush, for example. It used to be the Body Shop before they sold out. And the big hoo-ha that went on in the makeup world when companies wanted to get into China, which is the big new market, but China require animal testing. So those who have gone into cosmetic brands that have gone into China have received a huge uproar in the media, and sort of people being very disappointed with them, rightfully so. They've given up on their morals and ethics for a quick bit of money. So then you have the sort of negative, dark stereotype, like you're in your room sacrificing animals, which is ridiculous given what I have just said about the reverence for life. And often it can be family members who don't understand, and they're just like, what you're doing is odd or weird, or why are you doing that, or why are you getting into something? And I remember my mother going, oh, well, pagans have altars. And I looked at her, and my honest response was, so do Catholics. What? And, you know, you have to approach these things with a level head, especially when it's family or friends or whatever. If you're like, right, if you don't want to know about it, then that's fair enough. And if they don't want to listen, then there's nothing you can do. But if they do want to listen, then you can just sit and say, well, this is how I view it. This isn't something unnatural and weird, and read this, or read this book, or something like that. I mean, there are going to be people who are afraid of religion no matter what you do, and with the pagan path in particular, they're going to be very, very wary. And if you're getting into it because you want to cast spells at people, then you're perpetuating that myth by yourself. You're not doing yourself any favours, you're not doing the spiritual path any favours, and you're entering it for all the wrong reasons. Spellcraft is something else I'm going to touch on. I'm going to write that down actually in the next section, which I meant to write down earlier, and I didn't. Right, so I think that will do for the judgment from the outside. All I can suggest for judgment coming from outside is that you don't keep perpetuating any of these myths. You don't do things that is going to on purpose freak people out, unless, you know, I don't know why you would do that, but that's not helping you or anyone else. But it's your path. That is the message of this entire video, that your path is your own, it's your responsibility, and that is the point. The judgment from within and without, it's on each and every one of us to change our behaviour. So the second one is those that are within the pagan path that judge us. Those who, you know, there's a lot of it, right? Of people who are a pagan or witch or whatever within the umbrella term, and they judge others in similar or the same path, however you want to put that. But there is a lot of it, and I mentioned spellcraft. I'll come down on that in a minute, but I think what I am going to focus on for this main point is Wicca. There is a lot of it at the minute around the YouTubes, around the internet, around the forums, and people are coming down on Wicca and judging Wiccans and being detrimental and being like, it's not worth it, it's so beneath me, about Wicca. And I think, how disrespectful. I'm not Wiccan. I started off reading about Wicca, and I've incorporated bits of Wicca into my path, which I will discuss in a minute. The path I've put my feet on at the minute is Celtic witchcraft. It's an ongoing path, and paths change, and paganism allows for that. Yes, Wicca is structured. Yes, there are parts of Wicca that I don't particularly agree with. So what do? You just cross it off your list and say, I don't feel right about that. You might write it in your Book of Shadows. Why don't you feel right about that? You don't go around doing this with your finger, saying like Wiccans are wrong for this, that and the other. And as a point of reference, I wrote down some things that Wicca has actually given us. Wicca has opened up the visibility and made mainstream public books, discussions, and even YouTubes a reality. It has allowed for the flow of information. Before Wicca, there was a huge lack of New Age and different spiritual path books, and sort of Wicca let that into the mainstream, sort of blaze trailed the way forward, so that a lot of other people came out and started writing books. Yes, there is going to be huge amounts of debate and discussion about what Wicca was based on, whether it went back to the bygones of bygones. I don't think so. There was all this historical debate and discussion, but that's no bad thing. To open up historical debate and discussion and ideas is no bad thing, and the mainstream integration of Wicca in society, even in the media, in like television and things, it starts to open it up. That's no bad thing, because people become aware of it and people think, well, maybe this is what I'm seeking. And I, like an awful lot of pagans, say I started in Wicca. I started there. That was my getting into it point. That's where all the books were, and to this day I carry parts of it with me. It allowed me to embrace new ideas, to get excited, to get the ball rolling on my path. And for that alone, I'm very grateful, and I think everybody should be, because dismissing Wicca just because it's no longer what you agree with, or it doesn't completely fit what you, it's so disrespectful. And there is a lot of it going on, and it's like, it might not be for you. It's not for me either, not in its entirety, but it doesn't mean you sit there and it's just wrong. What else has Wicca given us? The Wheel of the Year, the way that they celebrate the Wheel of the Year, has something that I incorporate and will always incorporate to this day. It helps me in tune with cycles. Not everybody likes ritual, and not everybody celebrates the Wheel of the Year. Personal choice. But I think it's a fantastic way of celebrating the god, the goddess, and the seasons around us, and not taking for granted everything we are given. At different points in the year, we celebrate different things. Halloween Samhain is one of my most adored holidays, always has been, and that is in turn celebrating ancestors and death. And then you have, you flip it, and we're coming up to Imbolc, which is about purifying yourself and going into the new year and cleansing with flame and welcoming back the warm half of the year. We're going into it. You celebrate all different things at different points of the year, and that is a real sense of joy, rather than looking down on Wicca and judging it. The Year and a Day study is Wiccan, which a lot of people adopt, and sort of still out of hand dismissing Wicca, and yet you're adopting the ideas that they put forward. The Year and a Day is a way that they structured their religion so that you should be more informed, more educated in what you are doing before you are properly engaging in it, which there's no bad thing in investigating and opening your mind. And they also, in the modern sense, opened up the idea of a coven with a high priest and a high priestess. I wrote a few notes about the ideas of covens here because I researched this a little bit. Coven in a general sense, is around in the 1500s, but that had nothing to do with witches. The first terminology of it in connection with witches is from the 1662 witch trial of Isabella Gaudy, something like that. I can't read my own handwriting, which is a bit terrible. Negative association from a witch hunting perspective. It then remained largely unused until 1921, when Margaret Murray wrote The Witch Cult of Eastern Europe, which, if you haven't got any idea what I'm going on about, you want to go read all about that, because the whole idea of this hidden ancient religion being worshipped quietly in the corners comes mainly from her investigations of history, which has been debunked and argued against within history. She promoted this idea of a coven of 13 witches, and she supported the idea of Wicca as a religion, and the Wicca as it came out, more popularised by Gerald Gardner, is what popularised the idea of covens in the modern pagan sense. So for all those things, we have Wicca to thank. And what I have written down here is that a lot of the criticism currently aimed at Wicca is their rule of harm none. Now, harm none, do as thou wilt and yet harm none, it's caused this huge controversy all over the place. Like, it's not possible, it's not feasible, it's stupid. And the minute you get to that point where you criticise it and call it stupid, you're being overly judgmental and you want to smack yourself around the face. Because apart from, it is idealistic. No argument for me. It is overly idealistic there. Is it possible to live through your life and never harm anybody, never in word or deed? No, it's not possible, in my opinion. Is it a stupid idea? No. To go through life trying not to harm people and trying not to hurt people is a noble goal. To go into the world and go, well, everybody else is treading all over everyone else is out to make a profit, everyone else doesn't care who they hurt, smack, and they do, you know, I'm going to do it whatever, I'm going to do it for power, I'm going to do it for money, I'm going to do it for profit. You're becoming part of a problem. You're becoming part of a social disease, because the world is like that. The world is centered on materialistic things. The world is focused on money and profit and screwing over whoever you have to get to the top. And if you buy into that, you're just adding to the problem. And that is another part of this judging on other people within the pagan umbrella term, witchcraft, whatever, community. There is this awful judgment going on, like, and it's on both sides. So let's take this Harmnan thing and let's pull it a bit further than that, and the whole notion of cursing and hexing and whatnot, of malicious magic. Okay, so you have people on one side saying real witches don't do that because that's hurting other people, and it's degrading and debasing and then on the other side of it you have people going, real witches do curse and hex all the time, and anyone who says so isn't a real witch. And you just want to be like, is this necessary? Is this, you're both being judgmental on each other and tearing the whole thing apart. Malicious magic is a huge issue of matter of debate onto itself. I'm not even going to start to address it in here. The way I see life and magic is that I don't go through life purposefully trying to hurt anybody, because I find that sad, I find that upsetting, I find it shallow, narrow-minded and selfish. I have no need to hurt people to make myself feel any better, and that's where it comes from. People who go through life trying to hurt other people are those people who've got something missing within themselves, within their lives, and it's like the mentality of the best way I can think of it is 13-year-old girls. This is when I learnt my major lessons about how this is, and unfortunately it's still this way even as you grow older. You think you're going to leave school and it's going to stop. No. So I was, you know, in a group of 13-year-old girls, and one person would always be picked on, and the rest of the group would like harrow in and pick on it, and I became more and more and more uncomfortable with this, and I left, and it all fell apart after I left. And it was this huge thing that I had dared leave the group mentality because no one had ever done it, and I hung around with less popular girls who didn't do it the same, you know, it wasn't the same sort of awful harrowing in and picking on people who didn't agree with the way that they decided this should be. And that's true of everything in life, and unfortunately within paganism there's this huge judgment on people, and it's like, well, if you don't do it the way we want to do it, then you're wrong, you're stupid, you're not a real witch. And you just think, really? How uneducated is that? You can't discuss and debate, and you can't accept, you can't find middle ground, you can't learn from each other, you can't debate, you can't discuss. Really? You have to say this person is wrong, this person is not with you, this person is, I don't know. And there's this huge judgment like going on, and I don't fully understand what on earth is going on about why people feel they need to be right, why they feel they need to be higher up than someone else, like they can condescend other people. This is what I told someone the other day. I said, we never ever stop learning and changing and growing, and the minute we think we've stopped learning and we've got all we want to do, the goddess should by rights smack us on our arse and go, no you don't, because you might as well not be on this path if you ever get to the point where you think you know it all. You can have been doing this for years and years and years. It doesn't make a single bit of difference. You can be 30 years in the pagan path and you should still have things to learn. That's really important, to take that humble approach to things rather than this high horse almighty judgment thing. You should really be saying, I don't know everything. I don't know everything, certainly. I've just started out on this Celtic path. I have no idea yet. I'm reading, I'm absorbing, I'm trying out new things, I'm following my guides, I'm following the goddess. I don't know the ins and outs of it yet, never mind pretend to be some sort of expert or whatever. And in the matters of faith, you can't be an expert because it's individual. What means something to you doesn't mean something to something else, and that's fine. So what else have we, I've done focus on yourself. Yeah, so the final point of this is basically to stop the judgment. And it's a really difficult thing in every single walk of life because we are trained, instilled, and society sort of means, you know, that we see a person in a situation and we judge them. If you want an outside religious example, then homeless people. You 5 people will see homeless people and they'll get 5 different reasons in their head as to why the person is homeless, and probably most of them will be negative, like it's their own fault. There's this societal breeding of judgment on people. If you want another example, there are people who have been victims of crime, and people honestly in their heads somewhere go along the line they deserved it. And it happens. It really, really does happen. And it's the saddest thing in the world. And it's happening within paganism. And we as pagans need to stop it within ourselves before we can ever hope to other people outside of paganism to stop judging us. And there's this huge, huge chip on the shoulder about other religions judging us. Other religions saying we're evil, and people get a huge chip on the shoulder about it. And all I can say is, unless you are living in such a way where you aren't judging other people for their religious beliefs or whatever, then you have no right to not be judged. You can't take the hump with being judged if you're not living in such a way where you don't judge other people. So for anybody who is the victim of this judgment nature, the best thing I can say is hold true to yourself, your beliefs, and your spiritual path. It may well be for the best to be solitary if you found yourself, you know, you're trying to learn and it's just getting judged from every angle. Solitary is a way in which you can learn about yourself, learn about your own path, your own beliefs, until you are solid within that and you've done the research and the meditation and the path walking to back yourself up, where you get to the point where you're like, no one's going to tell me that their path is right and mine is wrong, whether they're pagan or not, because nobody has that right. Nobody is more of a witch or a pagan than anybody else. Nobody is better as a witch or a pagan than anybody else. If somebody is committing harm or abuse, that's not them being a witch, that's them utilising something to be abusive, and that is something else and they need dealing with by the proper authorities. But in a general sense, nobody has the right to go on high and look down on you and say, well, you're not as good a witch as I am, or well, you're not as good a pagan as me. They just don't. They just don't have the right. And just believe in yourself, believe in your God and Goddess, your spirituality, your divinity, and walk your own path. No one has the right to pick on anybody else and judge them and bully them, basically. And it takes a far stronger person to stand up to people when they see these people judging them. And that is what pagans need to do. We need to stand up on our 2 feet and say, when you are doing this, you're bullying this person, that you are judging this person, you are hurting another human being rather than helping them. Rather than adding to their path, you are detracting from their path, you're making them doubt themselves for the matters of power and fear and profit. And that happens within every single religion, not just paganism. So it really is something we have to combat, because fear and power and financial profit cannot be allowed to drive a spiritual path, because we've got plenty of examples of that in the world as it is. And what happens to those religions? They fall to bits, because they're not built on things that make our lives enriched. They are built on things that basically drag us down, make us feel bad, and belittle us. Paganism is supposed to be about the freedom to choose, the freedom to decide on your path and make it your own and use your own quirks and personality traits and your relationship with the divine to create something beautiful. And that is what your path should be. And no one else has the right to look down on high and be like, your path is this, your path is that, and give you reasons. If someone tells you your path is lesser than theirs for whatever and give you reasons, give them the finger and walk away, because it's nonsense. It's nonsense. Sometimes silence is the best method, especially with non-pagans. If they really are not going to accept you, then what are you going to do? There's no point arguing with people who are not going to accept you, because all they're going to do is see that you are getting angry, agitated, and whatever, as coming from what you're doing, what your paganism, your witchcraft, and see it as a further negative of that thing. There's no point. You should just be like, alright, if you can't agree, then leave it at that. So I'm going to leave it there. 30 whole minutes of me rambling and ranting. So just the whole point of this is just, please, the pagan community, think about it. Think about what you're doing. And when you're starting to pass judgment, it's probably you should be looking in at yourself. Why are you passing that judgment? Why do you think this is lesser than this? Why, rather than hammering somebody else. And that's going to be it. Many blessings.